Jackson Carr exhaled sharply, his four nostrils flaring in frustration as he corrected the young ensign. Humans didn't have laser eyes or acid blood. That's just absurd propaganda spread by entertainment feeds, he said. The ensign, Caleb Price, recoiled slightly, his bioluminescent freckles dimming in embarrassment. Sorry, Commander. It's just they sound so convincing, he muttered. Carr ran a clawed hand over his rigid scalp, exasperated. 300 years. 300 years since humanity was supposed to be extinct, and now they've turned into nothing but tall tales and bogeyman stories to frighten hatchlings. He knew he shouldn't let it get to him, but the younger generation's dismissal of human history always sent his secondary heart racing. Listen closely because I won't be repeating myself, Carr said, leaning forward in his command chair. The hum of the bridge surrounded them, the rest of the crew pretending not to eavesdrop. Humans were real, very real. They weren't gods or monsters. They were just different, unpredictable, and that's what made them dangerous. Price nodded meekly, but Carr could tell he was only humoring him. Who could blame the kid? In the modern Zarellian Union, humans were discussed with the same scientific seriousness as ancient dragons or soul-eating shadow beasts from pre-Enlightenment folklore. Commander, called Lieutenant Avery Collins from the sensor station. We're nearing the outer boundary of the Crimson Nebula. Nothing out of the ordinary to report. Standard patrol route will be completed in about 26 units. Carr felt a wave of relief. He acknowledged the update, grateful for the distraction. These routine border patrols were mind-numbing, but at least they kept the crew sharp. The Crimson Nebula marked the farthest edge of Zarellian space, a beautiful yet largely desolate region, save for automated mining operations and occasional research outposts. Carr stretched his 7-ton frame. I'll be in my quarters, Lieutenant Collins. You have the bridge. Alert me if... His words were cut short by an urgent tone in Navigator Hunter Daniels' voice. Commander, something's not right, Daniels said, the usual hum of the bridge fading into tense silence. We're picking up something unusual. Carr's mandibles clicked in irritation. Define unusual, Navigator. Multiple objects, sir. Large ones. They just appeared at the edge of our long-range scanners, Daniels replied, his tentacles dancing across the holographic interface. They weren't there one moment, and now... He paused. Could it be cloaking technology? No, sir, Daniels corrected. More like they just jumped in from somewhere else. The bridge fell silent. Faster than light, FTL travel was common, but to appear so suddenly at the edge of a patrol route, that suggested either an incredible coincidence or something more deliberate. Carr quickly barked, "Put it on the main viewer." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a distant cluster of objects against the crimson backdrop of the nebula. As the computer enhanced and magnified the image, Carr felt a tightening sensation in his exoskeleton. That's impossible, Lieutenant Collins whispered, echoing the thought racing through Carr's mind. The ships were unlike anything in the modern Zarellian fleet, or any known species in the Galactic Consortium for that matter. Their design was almost primitive, blunt, and functional, with none of the sleek biomimicry that characterized current shipbuilding aesthetics. Each vessel bristled with unmistakable weapon ports, and their hulls bore markings in a script that the computer struggled to translate. But Carr didn't need a translation. He'd seen those symbols before in historical archives, in restricted sections that required his command-level clearance. Commander, Collins' voice wavered. According to the database, those ships matched the design specifications of human vessels. That's absurd, Caleb Price blurted out. Humans are extinct, everyone knows that. Carr's gaze remained fixed on the screen on those approaching ships that couldn't exist. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of stress he couldn't suppress. Well, Ensign, he said finally, a grim chuckle escaping his throat. It seems everyone might be wrong. Looks like the legends just showed up on our doorstep. Magnify Sector 7 Alpha, Carr commanded, his voice steadier than he felt. The main display zoomed in on the lead vessel, a massive angular behemoth that dwarfed their patrol ship. And someone get Admiral Victor Slade on a secure channel now. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Caleb Price stared at the screen, mouth agape, while Lieutenant Collins rapidly cross-referenced the ship designs against the historical database. This has to be some kind of joke, muttered Security Chief Jessica Cole, her scaled fingers hovering over the weapons console. Or a trap. Maybe pirates using old design schematics to throw us off. Carr wished he could believe that. Pirates don't have the resources to build a fleet this size, he said, gesturing to the tactical display. The computer now counted 27 vessels of varying sizes, all bearing that unmistakable human aesthetic, function over form, brutal efficiency in every line. Besides, those designs were classified at the highest level. It could be a glitch in the sensor array, suggested Navigator Hunter Daniels, his voice tinged with desperation. Remember the Vornaxian incident? Half the fleet mobilized because someone forgot to recalibrate the sensors. Maybe we need a full diagnostic. Carr interrupted him. Continue tracking those ships. Collins, what does the database say? Lieutenant Collins' three eyes were wide with disbelief. Sir, the computer confirms a 96.8% match with historical records of human military vessels from the pre-purge era. She hesitated. But what, Lieutenant? Carr urged. But these ships, Collins continued, her voice trembling, show significant technological advances beyond what was recorded. The energy signatures are they're unlike anything in our database. A chill ran down Carr's spine, and his dermal plates contracted painfully. Humans had always been technological innovators, adapting and improving at a rate that terrified even the most advanced species. The more methodical species of the galaxy had long considered humanity far too unpredictable, which was one of the key reasons the consortium had decided they were too dangerous to remain in existence. Sir, called out the communications officer, Doctor, I've managed to get Admiral Victor Slade on the line. The holographic screen split down the middle, one side showing the approaching fleet, the other displaying the stern visage of Admiral Victor Slade. His crystalline exoskeleton shimmered with visible stress fractures, definitely not a good sign. Commander Carr, explain this transmission and choose your words carefully, the Admiral's voice rang out firm and unyielding. Carr snapped to attention. Admiral, at 0740 hours patrol time, we detected a fleet of unidentified origin at the edge of the Crimson Nebula. Initial analysis indicates. He hesitated for a brief moment before continuing. Human design characteristics. A long silence followed, stretching uncomfortably, until the Admiral's voice finally broke through, harsh and disbelieving. Your sensor array is malfunctioning. Return to base immediately for repairs. With all due respect, Admiral, we've conducted 3 separate diagnostics. The readings are accurate. We are tracking 27 vessels of clear human origin approaching Xerelian space at sublight speed. The Admiral's exoskeleton cracked audibly in disbelief. Impossible. The humans were eradicated 3 centuries ago. The purge was thorough. Apparently not thorough enough, Carr muttered, immediately regretting his casual tone. Before the Admiral could respond, Navigator Hunter Daniels' voice rang out. Commander, the lead vessel is changing course. It's heading straight for us. On the tactical display, the massive human ship shifted with an almost graceful pivot, now on a perfect intercept trajectory with the Vigilant Dawn. Are they preparing to charge weapons? Carr demanded. Negative, replied Jessica Cole, her voice nearly dripping with disappointment. No weapon signatures detected. But, sir, they are broadcasting on all frequencies. The Admiral's voice sharpened. Do not respond, Commander. That's an order. Disengage immediately and return to... Sir, Lieutenant Collins interrupted, her voice almost a whisper. The translation matrix has decoded their identification signal. She glanced up, her 3 eyes wide with disbelief. They're identifying themselves as the Earth Alliance flagship Remembrance, under the command of Captain Olivia Carter. The name struck Carr like a physical blow. Earth, the human homeworld, thought to be reduced to a barren, lifeless rock during the purge. Now ships claiming to be from the Earth Alliance had appeared on the edge of Xerelian space. Admiral, Carr said, ignoring protocol, they're hailing us directly. What are your orders? Do not respond. Each word from the Admiral seemed to physically pain him, but it was already too late. On the main screen, the translation of the human broadcast flashed across for all to see. Detention Zanui vessel, this is Captain Olivia Carter of the Earth Alliance. We come in peace, bearing critical information for all sentient species of the galaxy. Please respond. Jessica Cole let out a scoff, her scales rippling with nervous energy. They come in peace, huh? Just like last time. Carr shot her a warning look. Historical records indicate the consortium struck first, he replied quietly. Commander Carr, the Admiral's voice thundered across the bridge. You will maintain communication silence and withdraw immediately. This is a direct order. But Carr couldn't tear his gaze away from the tactical display, his eyes locked on those ships, those impossible ships. His grandfather, who had fought in the final days of the purge, had told Carr stories, never in public, always whispered in the dead of night, stories that contradicted the official history, stories of human bravery, of desperation, of a species fighting not for conquest, but simply for survival. And those stories had ended with a chilling prediction. They're not gone, little one. Humans never stay down. Someday they'll return. And now it seemed that someday had come. Admiral, Carr spoke in a low but firm voice. With all due respect, if we don't respond, they might interpret our silence as an act of hostility. The Admiral's crystalline face fractured even further with stress lines. And if we do respond, we legitimize their presence. Extinct species don't usually fly flagships into your territory, muttered Ensign Caleb Price, not quite quiet enough. Carr shot the young officer a glare that promised consequences later, though privately he agreed with the sentiment. Admiral, I believe this situation falls outside the standard protocols, Carr continued. These humans, if they are humans, have advanced technology and a fleet of significant size. They claim to bring critical information, the strategic value alone. You've made your point, Commander. The Admiral cut him off, mandibles clicking rapidly. Very well. You may establish limited communication, information gathering only, make no agreements, no concessions, and absolutely no invitations into Zerelian space. Do I make myself clear? Crystal, sir, Carr replied, intentionally using the human idiom. If the Admiral noticed, he didn't comment, and the connection was abruptly severed. The bridge crew stood frozen, awaiting Carr's next move. He took a moment to center himself, the weight of history pressing down on him. Officer Doctor, open a channel to the human vessel. Channel open, sir. Carr straightened to his full height. This is Commander Carr of the Exurelian Union vessel, Vigilant Dawn. We acknowledge your transmission, Earth Alliance ship. Be advised, you are entering sovereign Anari space. State your purpose for being in this sector. There was a brief, surprising delay indicating the humans had likely already prepared their translation protocols. Then the main screen flickered, and the collective gasp from the bridge crew was audible. Sitting on the screen was an unmistakably human female, Carr deduced from his historical knowledge. She had dark skin, close-cropped silver hair that contrasted sharply with her youthful appearance, and a midnight blue uniform with silver accents. The insignia on her uniform was already being cataloged by the computer, but it was her eyes, dark, intense, and laser-focused, that captured Carr's attention. These weren't the eyes of a representative from a defeated species. Commander Carr, she said, her voice unexpectedly melodious to Zerelian auditory organs. I'm Captain Olivia Carter of the Earth Alliance. Thank you for responding. We understand our arrival must be unexpected. That, Carr replied dryly, would be an understatement, Captain. According to all official records, your species has been extinct for approximately 300 standard years. The human's lips curled upward slightly, an almost imperceptible smile, but it held no warmth. Reports of our extinction were premature, she said, her voice even, though there was a sharp edge to it. Though the consortium certainly tried its best. Security Chief Jessica Cole hissed softly, her claws instinctively extending in defense. Carr silenced her with a brief gesture, his focus unwavering. Where have you been for 3 centuries, Captain? And why reveal yourselves now? Captain Carter leaned forward in her seat, a gesture of authority among humans, if Carr recalled correctly. Not hiding, Commander, surviving. After the purge, the remnants of humanity fled beyond the reaches of known space. We found refuge in areas your astronomers haven't even named yet. She paused, a flicker of something unfamiliar crossing her face. As for why we've returned now, necessity forces our hand. We've detected something heading toward galactic space, something that threatens all sentient life, not just humans. Convenient timing, Jessica Cole muttered, almost too quietly. Come back from the dead with stories of an even greater threat. To Carr's surprise, the human captain let out a sharp laugh, startling in its harshness. Believe me, we would have preferred another century of isolation. But when the choice is between facing old enemies or certain extinction for all, we chose to confront the former. Carr found himself captivated by her frankness. The historical records painted humanity as duplicitous, masters of manipulation. Yet this was anything but the profile he had been taught. What sort of threat could drive you back into the territory of those who nearly wiped you out? He asked. The kind that's already destroyed 3 of our outer colony worlds, Captain Carter answered, her expression grave. We call them the Void Harvesters. They consume all organic matter on a planet's surface before moving on. No attempts at communication have succeeded. They seemed to view all life as nothing more than resources. A chill crept through the bridge, and Carr noticed Ensign Caleb Price's bioluminescent spots had dimmed almost entirely. A clear fear response. "You expect us to believe this?" Carr asked, though his skepticism felt hollow, even to him. "That you've come back to warn the very civilizations that tried to annihilate you. Whether you believe us or not doesn't change the reality of the threat," Carter said calmly. "But yes, that's exactly why we're here. Despite everything, we still see ourselves as part of this galaxy's community of sentient species. And unlike some species," she met his gaze, her eyes hardening, "humans don't abandon others to genocide, even former enemies." Her words hit home. The Zerelian Union had been one of the more hesitant participants in the purge, but they had still taken part. "Captain," Carr said, his voice quiet, "I need to consult with my superiors. This situation is unprecedented." "Of course, Commander," she replied, her voice softening just slightly. "But don't take too long. The harvesters follow predictable patterns, and our models show them reaching Zerelian space in 60 standard days." She paused, and her expression shifted, becoming more somber. "For what it's worth, we're not here for revenge. That luxury died with the billions of humans lost in the purge. We're here because, like all of us, we need to survive what's coming." As the transmission ended, Carr found himself staring at the now blank screen, his mind racing. 60 days, a threat more terrifying than humanity, and a human captain offering an alliance rather than retribution. "Orders, sir?" Lieutenant Collins asked softly. Carr turned to face his crew, noting the mixture of fear, confusion, and, most concerning, hope on their faces. "Send all data to Central Command and prepare a secure transmission drone with full sensory records. If these humans are telling the truth, the consortium needs to know. And if they're lying," he hesitated, glancing back at the massive human fleet now displayed on the tactical readout, "then we need to be prepared for whatever comes next." Later, in the privacy of his quarters, Carr accessed the historical archives using his command codes. The holographic display bathed the dim room in an eerie blue glow as classified files from the Great Purge began to flicker to life. "Computer, access restricted archive, Human Extinction Campaign Authorization, KRZ-97. "Access granted," the synthetic voice responded. "Warning, contents classified level ultra. Unauthorized sharing is punishable by nerve wipe and exoskeleton dissolution." Carr clicked his mandibles nervously. He had accessed these files before, but only with a detached, academic interest. Now, with actual humans at the border of Zerelian space, the historical footage felt disturbingly immediate. The first images showed Earth, the human homeworld, as it had appeared before the purge, a blue-green jewel teeming with life and technology. Then came the orbital bombardment. Carr winced as continents cracked, oceans boiled, and billions of lives were extinguished in what the consortium had officially labeled a species security action. But it was the ground footage that truly haunted him. Unlike most species, who surrendered when faced with overwhelming odds, humans fought back with an intensity that defied reason. The records showed human soldiers, outgunned and outmatched, charging consortium forces with nothing but primitive weapons and makeshift explosives. Civilian resistance groups fought with guerrilla tactics that utterly baffled the consortium's highly regimented military doctrine. "Pause playback," Carr ordered, needing a moment to compose himself. He remembered his grandfather, Vice Admiral Krax, sitting by the hearth when Carr was young, speaking in hushed tones to avoid the household monitors. "The official reason for the purge was human aggression," Grandpa Krax had whispered, his old mandibles quivering. "But the truth, little one? It was fear, pure and simple. Humans adapted too quickly. While the rest of us spent millennia developing space travel, they did it in less than a century. Their biological adaptability meant they could colonize planets that would kill most other species. Their sociological adaptability meant they could absorb and improve on any technology they encountered." Young Carr had been fascinated, yet confused. If humans were so adaptable, why hadn't they simply integrated with the consortium? His grandfather's laugh had been bitter. Because humans don't just adapt to their environment. They make their environment adapt to them. The final straw had come when humans refused to accept population control measures. The Consortium Council saw the writing on the wall. In a few centuries, humans would outbreed, outbuild, and outthink everyone else. "Computer, resume playback," Carr said, his voice heavy. The footage continued, showing the final days of the campaign, Human resistance grew increasingly desperate as their colonies fell one by one. The last organized human military made its stand on a rocky moon called Titan, fighting to the last to buy time for civilian evacuation ships. Official records claimed all those ships were destroyed, but now Carr found himself wondering how many might have escaped into uncharted space. The most disturbing footage came from the scattered resistance cells that continued fighting even after formal surrender. Outnumbered and outgunned, they developed tactics that exploited consortium weaknesses with unnerving precision. One human resistance leader, her name redacted in the files, was recorded addressing her followers. "They expect us to break, to give up hope, but that's because they don't understand what humans are. We don't need favorable odds, we just need a fighting chance." Carr quickly shut off the display, plunging the room into darkness that seemed to match his growing unease. His grandfather's final words about humans echoed in his mind. "Remember, little one, the greatest mistake the consortium made wasn't trying to exterminate humans. It was assuming they had succeeded without a body count." Now, 3 centuries later, that mistake had manifested as a fleet of warships at the edge of Zurelian space. The door chime broke through his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Lieutenant Collins stepped in, her expression troubled. "Sir, Central Command has responded to our report. They're dispatching the 7th Fleet to our position." Carr's primary heart skipped a beat. "The 7th Fleet is a combat formation?" "Yes, sir. Admiral Pax Zara has classified the human presence as a Category 1 existential threat. All officers are ordered to prepare for possible hostilities. The human warning about these void harvesters has been dismissed as a deception tactic, sir." Carr turned to the window, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the human fleet waited, poised for an answer. "My grandfather used to say that humans possessed a quality unique among sentient species," Carr said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "He called it stubborn hope, the ability to face impossible odds and still believe that victory is possible." Carr turned back to his lieutenant. "I wonder if we could use some of that quality now." Lieutenant Collins shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, speaking like that could be considered sympathetic to the enemy." "Enemy," Carr repeated, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. 300 years ago, we made humans our enemies because we feared what they might become. I have to wonder if, in doing so, we created exactly what we feared. The Vigilant Dawn's communications array practically exploded with a torrent of incoming transmissions. Every government official, military commander, and panicked bureaucrat in the Zurelian Union seemed determined to personally contact Commander Carr. His small patrol vessel had become the unexpected epicenter of the greatest political crisis in 3 centuries. "Sir," Communications Officer Doctor complained, her vocal sacs inflating with stress, "the Diplomatic Corps has demanded your presence at an emergency session for the 4th time in 2 hours. The Military Strategic Command wants immediate access to all sensor data. The Historical Verification Committee is questioning the authenticity of our footage," she added, her tone filled with bewilderment. "The religious authority wants to know if humans still practice something called handshaking, as it may constitute a prophesied apocalypse sign." Carr stifled a groan. "Tell the Diplomatic Corps." "I'm maintaining vigilance at a potential conflict zone," Carr instructed. "Send everything to Strategic Command except our communications with Captain Carter. Follow Protocol 7B for first contact scenarios. Notify the Historical Committee that I'll personally vouch for the authenticity of our data, using my family's honor, and tell the religious authority," he paused, mandibles twitching in frustration, "that I've been too preoccupied with preventing interspecies warfare to inquire about human greeting customs." "Understood, sir," Doctor replied, though her tone betrayed her amusement. The Situation Room display flickered, showing the rapidly escalating crisis. The Zurelian Union had notified the Galactic Consortium, triggering emergency protocols across 17 sovereign species. The reactions were diverse. The crystalline Pax Tholians had sealed their borders immediately. The gaseous Freen had proposed recognizing the human remnant diplomatically, and the hive-minded Theridons had entered a collective silence, their neural networks apparently overwhelmed by the paradigm shift. The most troubling development, however, came from the Orkothi, ancient adversaries of humanity, who had already dispatched their infamous planet-killer dreadnoughts towards Zurelian space. "The consortium is fracturing along historical fault lines," Lieutenant Collins observed, her eyes glued to the diplomatic feeds. "The species that supported the purge are pushing for immediate military action, while those that opposed it are calling for diplomatic engagement." "And the Zurelian Union?" Carr asked, his tone even. Officially neutral, pending full investigation, Lieutenant Collins replied after a slight pause. Unofficially, the military faction has gained the upper hand. War preparations are underway. Carr nodded gravely. The Zarelian had reluctantly participated in the purge, contributing ships and resources, but mostly avoiding direct combat roles. Their historical guilt wasn't as heavy as other species, but they had still managed to maintain a cleaner reputation. "Commander," Ensign Caleb Price called from the sensor station, "we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. The Xyrelian 7th Fleet has arrived, along with observers from 4 consortium species." The tactical display confirmed that 43 Zarelian warships had positioned themselves between the Vigilant Dawn and the human fleet. Observers from the Orkothi, Pax Tholen, Vine, and Kelox were also present, officially as diplomatic witnesses, but their readiness clearly indicated they were prepared for hostilities if necessary. "They've created a containment formation," Security Chief Jessica Cole remarked with professional admiration, "a textbook encirclement strategy." The door to the Situation Room hissed open, admitting Admiral Pax Zara. His crystalline exoskeleton was reinforced with ceremonial battle plates, and his eyes glittered with barely controlled anxiety. "Commander Carr," he greeted him curtly, "I've come to oversee this historical anomaly in person." Carr stood at attention. "Admiral, as instructed, we've maintained the containment perimeter. The human vessels have not advanced further. They've continued communications, automated diplomatic signals, requesting dialogue." The Admiral waved dismissively. "Irrelevant. The Consortium Council is convening an emergency session. Until their determination, we will hold our position and prepare for all contingencies." Carr hesitated, his mind racing. He was walking a tightrope, navigating through treacherous political waters. "Sir, regarding the human warning about these void harvesters is a transparent attempt to create discord," Pax Zara interjected sharply. "Really, Commander? I expected better from you. These humans appear after centuries, claiming some larger threat that conveniently requires our cooperation. It's a classic manipulation tactic." Carr's response was calm but unwavering. "With all due respect, Admiral, what if they are telling the truth? Shouldn't we at least consider investigating?" "Your fascination with human history is well known," Pax Zara replied icily. "Perhaps too well known. Some members of the military caste are starting to question whether your judgment is compromised." The accusation hung in the air, suffocating and unmistakable. Carr could feel his secondary hearts pounding, but he kept his voice steady. "My loyalty to the Zarelian Union is unshakable, Admiral." "Then prove it," Pax Zara demanded, his tone turning even sharper. "You will take a diplomatic shuttle to the human flagship alone and deliver the consortium's terms. Immediate withdrawal beyond the Crimson Nebula, full disclosure of all human colony locations, and the surrender of all military vessels for inspection." Carr stared at the Admiral, stunned. "Those aren't diplomatic terms, Admiral," he protested. "Those are demands for surrender. No sovereign power would ever accept such terms." The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly, a clear sign of agitation. "Then we'll have confirmation of their hostile intent, won't we?" he retorted. Pax Zara turned to leave, but paused for a moment. "Oh, and Commander, your grandfather served with distinction despite his controversial views on the purge. It would be unfortunate if his lineage ended in disgrace." After the Admiral left, the Situation Room was filled with silence, the weight of his words hanging heavy. Navigator Hunter Daniels' quiet voice broke the stillness. "Sir, will you deliver those terms?" Carr stood, his eyes locked on the tactical display showing the human fleet, a fleet that had traveled unimaginable distances. Had they come to warn of a common threat? Or was this a long-awaited act of vengeance? "Yes, Navigator," Carr answered, his voice calm but resolute. "But I will also listen to what they have to say, something my esteemed Admiral seems unwilling to do." "Commander," Security Chief Jessica Cole spoke nervously, clicking her mandibles in unease. "That may border on insubordination." Carr straightened his uniform, his gaze unwavering. "No, Morta, that borders on survival. Prepare my shuttle. I'm going to meet Captain Olivia Carter face to face." The diplomatic shuttle approached the human flagship with caution. Despite being cleared by Zarelian military protocols as non-threatening, the small vessel felt unbearably exposed as it neared the massive human warship. The Remembrance loomed large, dwarfing Carr's shuttle like a predator sizing up its prey. "Zarelian shuttle, you are cleared for docking Bay 7. came the calm, neutral voice of a human traffic controller. Please follow the guidance beacons. Captain Carter is awaiting your arrival. As Carr's shuttle passed through the external force field and entered the cavernous docking bay, he couldn't help but admire the human design. Unlike the organic, flowing architecture favored by many consortium species, the human ship was starkly pragmatic. Every part of it served a specific purpose, every space efficiently utilized for functionality. A small reception party waited as Carr's airlock cycled open. Captain Olivia Carter stood at the front, flanked by two officers. One was tall and pale, with facial hair, while the other was shorter, with features suggesting genetic ties to Earth's eastern regions, according to Carr's historical knowledge. Commander Carr, Captain Carter greeted him, offering a shallow bow rather than the feared handshake that the religious authority had fretted over. Welcome aboard the Remembrance. Carr returned the gesture, his posture dignified. Captain, he replied, his voice firm yet measured. I come bearing an official communication from the Galactic Consortium, Carr stated. I imagined as much, Captain Carter replied, offering a thin smile. We can discuss it in the briefing room. These are my executive officers, Commander Jackson and Lieutenant Park. The human officers nodded respectfully, though Carr could detect an underlying tension in their posture. They led him through corridors buzzing with activity, human crew members bustling about their duties, occasionally stealing curious glances at the alien visitor. Despite their evident military discipline, Carr observed that the humans maintained a physical proximity to one another that would be deemed inappropriately intimate among Xerelian. The briefing room was stark yet functional. As Carr settled into a reinforced chair clearly designed to accommodate non-human physiology, Captain Carter spoke directly. Before you deliver what I suspect are ultimatums disguised as terms, Commander, I'd like to show you something. Without waiting for his response, she activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. This was Outpost Horizon, our furthest colony from Earth-controlled space, population 18,000 and the hologram displayed a thriving settlement on a rocky, wind-swept world with prefabricated buildings arranged in concentric circles, hydroponic farms, and what appeared to be mining operations. This is Outpost Horizon, she continued, 48 hours later. The image shifted dramatically. The colony was simply gone. In its place was bare rock, scoured clean, as if by some unimaginable force. There was no rubble, no ruins, nothing, not even corpses, just a perfect circle of stripped bedrock. What happened? Carr asked, his professional skepticism warring with an instinctive sense of horror. The Void Harvesters, Commander Jackson answered, his deep voice resonating through the room. They came from beyond the galactic rim, no warning, no communication attempts, no apparent motivation except consumption. Lieutenant Park stepped forward, manipulating the holographic controls. This is drone footage captured during the attack on New Anchorage, our second colony to fall. The footage showed massive ships, if they could even be called ships, descending from orbit. They resembled enormous metallic jellyfish, with tentacle-like appendages trailing behind them. Wherever these appendages touched, matter simply disappeared. They consume all organic material, Park explained clinically, though her hands trembled slightly. Plants, animals, people, even microorganisms in the soil. Nothing biological remains. They also target specific refined metals and synthetic compounds, precisely those used in computing and communications technology. Carr's exoskeleton tightened with instinctive dread as he watched the footage. The drone's perspective swung erratically as it attempted to flee, capturing glimpses of colonists running in terror before being overtaken by the wave of nothingness. This could be fabricated, Carr said, his voice steady, though his mind was reeling. It isn't, Captain Carter replied quietly. But I understand your skepticism. That's why we brought this. She gestured to Park, who placed a small container on the table. Inside was a fragment of metallic material, iridescent and disturbing to look at. A piece of a harvester, Commander Jackson explained, recovered during a suicide mission. 3 ships were lost to retrieve this sample. Carr's scientific curiosity overtook his caution, and he leaned forward to examine the fragment, his 4 eyes studying it intently. The molecular structure is unusual. It defies conventional analysis, Park confirmed, her voice steady. The material shifts at the quantum level when observed, and it absorbs all energy without re-emission, a perfect energy sink. Carr's fascination momentarily overpowered his diplomatic concerns. theoretically impossible. Yet here it is, Carter nodded solemnly. And there are hundreds of harvester vessels heading toward populated space. Their trajectory and speed suggest they'll reach the Pax Tholan colonies first. Then, the Zerelian outer worlds. Carr's gaze lifted from the fragment, his mind racing. Why come to us after the purge? Why warn the descendants of those who tried to exterminate us? Carter finished for him. Because we're still human, Commander. And despite everything your consortium did, most of us still believe that all sentient life has value. Most? Carr asked, his skepticism evident. Carter's expression hardened. I won't pretend there weren't voices in our government advocating that we simply let the harvesters cleanse the galaxy of our former enemies, but we've seen what they do. No one deserves that fate, not even those who would have erased us from history. Carr weighed her words, the footage, the impossible fragment. Finally, he reached into his diplomatic pouch and retrieved the data crystal containing the consortium's demands. Captain Carter, Carr said, his voice firm, I've been ordered to present these terms as non-negotiable prerequisites for any further discussion. She accepted the crystal but did not immediately insert it into a reader. Let me guess, she said with a knowing smile. Withdraw our fleet, reveal our colonies, submit to inspections? Carr clicked his mandibles in surprise. Standard consortium playbook, she said knowingly. We prepared for this response, Carter continued, but we don't have time for diplomatic games. She leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. The harvesters will reach your territory in less than 60 days. If we're going to stop them, we need to start preparing now. Carr's mind raced, torn between duty and the mounting evidence. Finally, he made a decision that could either end his career or save his civilization. What do you need from the Zyrelian Union? Captain Carter's expression softened slightly, perhaps with respect, perhaps with relief. Not surrender, Commander. Partnership. We need your scientists to analyze this material, your strategists to help plan a defense, and eventually, your ships to stand with ours. Carr nodded slowly, his expression grave. I cannot guarantee my government's cooperation, but I will bring your evidence and advocate for your position. He paused, then added, For what it's worth, I believe you. For the first time, Captain Carter smiled genuinely. That's a start, Commander. That's the first step toward humanity, and the consortium writing a different history this time around. The Grand Conference Chamber aboard the Zerelian diplomatic vessel Harmonious Accord buzzed with tension. Representatives from 7 consortium species sat in ecological comfort zones specially designed for their biology. The gaseous Zephyrians in their pressurized bubbles, the aquatic aqualiths in water tanks, and the arachnoid therodons on vibration-sensitive platforms. At one end sat the human delegation, and at the other, the Zerelian High Command. This is unprecedented, Supreme Commander Richard Montgomery muttered, his ceremonial armor clicking as he shifted uncomfortably. 3 weeks ago, humans were extinct. Now they sit in our council chambers. Admiral Pax Zra shot a venomous glance at Carr, who maintained a carefully neutral expression. His advocacy had succeeded beyond expectation, though not without significant cost to his career prospects. The evidence is compelling, countered Science Minister Trelza, her 4 eyes blinking asynchronously with excitement. The harvester fragment alone represents technology beyond our understanding, and the trajectory predictions have been verified by 3 independent astronomical bodies. The Orkothi representative slammed a clawed appendage on the table. Convenient timing. The humans return with tales of doom, just as we finally achieved true galactic stability. Captain Carter, seemingly unruffled by the tension, leaned forward. Stability or complacency? With all due respect, Ambassador, the consortium has grown comfortable in humanity's absence, perhaps too comfortable. You dare, the Orkothi representative began, but was interrupted by an unexpected voice. She's right. All eyes turned to Admiral Pax Zra, whose crystalline face showed fractured stress lines. Our military readiness has declined 23% in the past century. Research into weapons technology has stagnated. We've been at peace so long, we've forgotten how to fight. An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber, broken only by Commander Jackson from the human delegation. Which is why you need us. Humanity hasn't had the luxury of peace. We've been preparing, not for revenge, as you might think, but for survival. With a nod from Carter, Jackson activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. This is our current defensive technology. We call it the AG-1 system. The hologram showed a network of satellites deploying an energy field that seemed to repel the harvester ship's tentacle-like appendages. It doesn't destroy them, Jackson explained, but it prevents the consumption process. We've managed to protect 3 colonies this way. He paused significantly. However, the harvesters adapted within 72 hours, modifying their approach. We need new solutions and quickly. Science Minister Trell Xa couldn't contain her professional curiosity. The energy requirements for such a shield must be astronomical. That's where humanity has made our greatest advances, Lieutenant Park said, stepping forward. Necessity drove innovation. We've developed energy generation systems that your scientists would find interesting. That was an understatement. Carr knew the technical specifications the humans had shared with him privately had been nothing short of revolutionary. Cold fusion perfected, Z-point energy harnessed, quantum entanglement communications. 300 years of desperate survival had pushed human innovation far beyond anything the consortium had imagined. What the consortium has achieved in millennia of comfortable existence, we offer this technology freely, Captain Carter said, her voice calm yet authoritative, along with our ships, soldiers, and our experience. In return, we ask for 2 things: cooperation against the harvesters, and afterward, recognition of humanity's right to exist in this galaxy. The Korvath representative's mandibles clicked in rapid succession, his agitation clear. You ask us to simply forgive the past? Humans were deemed far too dangerous to coexist with civilized species. And yet, here you are. Carter held his gaze without rancor. Offering salvation instead of revenge. Judge us by our actions now, not by the fears of your ancestors. Carr observed as the chamber erupted into a cacophony of overlapping arguments. Some representatives used atmospheric gases, others communicated with pheromones, while still others relied on subsonic vibrations. The concept of cooperation with humans, the bogeyman of children's tales, clearly disturbed many, yet the evidence of the harvester threat was undeniable. During a particularly heated exchange between the Vine and Devar delegations, Captain Carter sidled closer to Carr. Your culture has a concept similar to what we call irony, Commander, she said, her tone quiet but pointed. We do, Carr confirmed, though his voice carried a touch of sarcasm. Though I suspect ours lacks the human appreciation for its darker aspects. Carter chuckled softly, her expression lightening. 3 centuries ago, your consortium tried to exterminate us because you feared we might someday pose a threat to your existence. Now your existence depends on our survival. She paused, then shook her head with a touch of irony. If I believed in cosmic justice, I might call this poetic. And yet you still came back to warn us, Carr remarked. We did, she agreed, meeting his gaze with quiet conviction. Because whatever else we are, and your legends have certainly painted us as monsters, humans protect their own. Somewhere along the way, we decided that our own includes all sentient life, she added, gesturing toward the chamber. Even those who once tried to erase us from the galaxy. As Carr watched the bickering representatives, he realized something remarkable about humanity's time in exile. They had preserved not only their technology and physical survival, but also something that the consortium, despite its power, had perhaps lost: conviction, purpose, and the will to act rather than merely exist. I believe, Carr said quietly to Carter, this alliance may teach us as much about being alive as it does about defeating the harvesters. Carter gave him a small, genuine smile that seemed to acknowledge his deeper meaning. Commander Carr stood on the observation deck of the Zarelian dreadnought Implacable Justice, watching as the combined fleet assembled. The massive viewports framed a breathtaking sight, hundreds of vessels from across the consortium gathering in battle formation, a unified armada not seen in 3 centuries. At the center of it all, the human ships, their angular, utilitarian designs now augmented with consortium technology. Just as Zarelian vessels now bristled with human innovations. Quite a sight, isn't it? Captain Carter said, joining him at the viewport. Unlike their first meeting, she now approached without hesitation, comfortable in his presence. Carr found himself feeling similarly at ease. It is, he agreed, the largest combined force in galactic history and still possibly not enough. Carter's face was solemn but resolute. We'll be ready. Carr studied her expression, still fascinated by how human emotions played so visibly across their features. His grandfather's stories hadn't exaggerated their expressiveness or their tenacity. When I was a hatchling, Carr said, humans were legends used to frighten young Zarelian into obedience. Study hard, or the humans will get you. Follow the rules or end up like the humans did. Carter laughed, the sound now familiar to his auditory receptors. "And what were we supposed to have done?" she asked, a light tone in her voice. The stories varied. Some said humans could infiltrate any security system. Others claimed you could survive any environment. The most terrifying tale suggested that humans could even disguise themselves as other species. Carr clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Looking at your physiology now, that particular legend seems quite far-fetched." "You'd be surprised," Carter replied with a cryptic smile that made Carr wonder if even now, humans had secrets they hadn't shared. Below them, on the massive dreadnought's primary deck, Cyrellian engineers worked alongside human technicians, installing the modified Aegis systems. What would have been unthinkable weeks ago had become everyday reality. Species that had once tried to exterminate each other, now working side by side against a common threat. "The first harvester vessels will reach the defensive perimeter in 6 days, Carr noted, checking his neural link to the battle network. Full swarm arrival projected 3 days after that. "We'll be ready," Carter said, her tone calm but tinged with an unshakable certainty. Not blind optimism, but a stubborn refusal to accept defeat, even when the odds suggested it was inevitable. "The outer colonies have been evacuated. The Aegis network is at 82% completion, and the counterattack force is assembled." Carr turned from the viewport to face her directly. "You know, in all our legends, in all our historical accounts, we never truly understood what made humans so formidable." He paused, searching for the right words. "We attributed it to your technology, your adaptability, your unpredictability. But that wasn't it, was it?" Carter raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What was it then?" "Hope," Carr said simply. "Even when we destroyed your homeworld, decimated your colonies, hunted your kind across the stars, you never gave up hope. 300 years of exile, and still you returned, not for vengeance, but to save the very civilizations that tried to erase you." She didn't deny it. "Hope is a human specialty," she said with a small, knowing grin. "That and spite." A grin flashed across her face. "Never underestimate how far humans will go just to prove someone wrong." At that moment, a chime from both of their communication devices interrupted the moment. "Grand Admiral Zilvax is calling for the final strategy conference before the fleet deploys to the defensive perimeter." As they turned to leave, Carr caught Carter's arm gently with one clawed hand. "Captain Carter, there's something my grandfather told me." "I've been meaning to share something with you," Captain Carter said, her voice soft as if deciding whether to open a window into her past. "He was there, at the very end of the purge. My grandfather told me that when the last human stronghold fell, consortium forces discovered a message carved into the walls of the fortress. Most people dismissed it as nothing more than empty defiance, but my grandfather never forgot it." Carr's 4 eyes fixed intently on her, sensing the weight of her words. "What did it say?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Today is not the end of humanity," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "It is merely the beginning of our legend." Carr's gaze remained steady, an almost palpable connection between them. "He always believed you would return someday. I think he would have found the irony fitting, that the species the galaxy feared most would turn out to be its last best hope." Carter gave a small, bittersweet smile, one filled with both sorrow and quiet pride. "We didn't seek to become legends, Commander. We just refused to let ourselves vanish." They walked side by side toward the conference room, an alien and a human once enemies, now united in the face of an unimaginable threat. Behind them, through the viewport, the collective might of the galaxy assembled in flawless formation. They were bound together by one force none of them had expected, humanity's relentless, stubborn, and inexplicable hope. As the stars sparkled off the sleek hulls of 1,000 ships, Carr's thoughts drifted. Perhaps, after all, the old legends had not been so far from the truth. Humans weren't dangerous because they were monsters, but because they made the impossible seem like just a challenge. They made the hopeless seem like an obstacle to overcome. They had transformed extinction into exile, defeat into resolve, and turned ancient enemies into allies. When the void itself arrived to threaten all life, humanity, the very creatures once feared and mocked, had become the galaxy's protector, its shield, its improbable savior. They weren't just legends anymore. They were legends worth believing in,